there's quite a bit of risk and risk mitigation strategies that go into optimizing all the things we're discussing here. And so, Ryan, I wanted to ask you, um, you know, what are some of the key risk management mitigation issues regarding managing temperature before, during, and after transit that you and your team try to mitigate? And then, how can you or how do you adapt the cryogenic supply chain to address any of those issues that come up?
Yeah, we have a lot of discussions around planning and timing being everything in the supply chain space. And timing, because to reduce your risk, you want to reduce the time in transit. It's advantageous to be able to have smooth handoffs at every link in the chain. But time is not your friend, and so Ricky mentioning kind of these are big, heavy. You have to plan everything that can go wrong along the process. You need to know the route that your material is traveling, how long it's expected to take at those handoffs. You need to include the redundancy in the temp tails. Potentially have GPS trackers. You want to be able to validate all the lanes and that your containers are traveling. Know how much time you have as a buffer before delays could impact your product, and really build off the experiences that folks like Ricky have. And one experience that I had was you plan everything out for the entire supply chain, and then it gets to the hospital and the patient's too sick to actually get the drug, and they have to actually spend an extra week before they can get it. Well, that wasn't initially planned in our first in human, and so that was an experience that you had to build off of and take it back and understand, do we have that extra time, and how long do you expect patients to potentially have to wait and get strong enough to be able to take the drug? And so there's going to be a lot of unexpected, but continue to learn from those experiences is important. The other one that is important is really vetting the shipping partners. As an early clinical stage company, a lot of times you'll look at more cost-effective options. And so you might go for a smaller player in the shipping field. A lot of times, though, and they don't control their own air cargo fleet, and therefore you're kind of at the mercy of some of these larger entities. And so that's a risk benefit that you have to decide what's best for your company, taking a little bit risk on these smaller, more cost-effective options, or paying a little bit more with the bigger entities that tend to have more stable opportunities. Is an area that we look at quite a bit.
Yeah, sure. And later on into this discussion, we'll get into that even more. And thank you for that anecdote about the patient. That really helps. I'm sure other companies have run into something similar. And so that's helpful to know for all our listeners too. Rookie, I want to make sure that we are offering you the same questions and the opportunity to speak on risk mitigation, excuse me. So like we said, as the availability of cell therapies grows, how are you adapting the cryogenic supply chain to address any of the increasing pressures that come up, whether it's, before, during, after transit, just throughout the entire timeline?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I love this quote that my boss says a lot, which is if you don't have a backup plan, then you're really planning to fail, right? So to Ryan's point, when you're talking about a patient's life, which all of these autologous life-saving therapies are, each one is important, right? 99% success rate in transportation isn't good enough, because that one person out of 100 that didn't get their treatment, that's bad for them. So we are always striving for 100% successful delivery, because that is their life-saving treatment, and they're the most important piece of why we do what we do. So to that front, what we try to do right now, we want to build a scalable supply chain that meets the moment now and meets the moment where we're trying to get. So, for example, at BMS, our stated goal that we've put out there to the market is 30,000 patients in the year 2030. We're trying to build to this big, huge number. And how do we get there? We've got to think about a supply chain now that can scale and grow with us to get there, have the got that backup supplier ready to go, or just, the use of multiple suppliers, multiple systems allows us to handle any kind of unknown, unexpected obstacles along the way. So things that we're thinking about right now are, we want to deal with what are the best in class shipping options now. Who are the best in class, white glove couriers out there? As we, Aaron, as you and I talked about, a few weeks ago, the CAR T space, the medicines that are going this direction of CAR T, allogeneic, autologous, the radioactive stuff that's coming, it's only going to, take away the existing capacity that's there now. So right now, if all of those companies that have all of these trials going suddenly got approved, there would be a big gap in the ability to, service all of those companies and get that cold chain would have a problem. There's going to be a huge bottleneck. So because most of us are dependent on commercial airlines and those schedules and the limitations that those commercial airlines have, right now, we need to start talking with our suppliers about what are we going to do to double the business every year. And it's not just DMS. It's all the companies that are out there. There are hundreds of companies out there with trials at one stage or another. And some of those are going to get approved, and they're going to want to ramp up as much as we do. So building those relationships now with the best-in-class suppliers is critical. Again, it's just thinking about long-term supply chain strategy. And I think what we've all learned from COVID is that nobody understood supply chain until toilet paper ran out and the world went nuts. And now all of a sudden, supply chain is usually mentioned as a negative reason why